Hey guys, Dan here with Battlefield Curator. This is a question that some people in the gun community have brought up multiple times. I've seen it on tons of comment sections. I've seen it throughout forums and Facebook groups. And the question is, why do people collect old guns? There's so many more modern firearms out there that have a practical use that is like 10 times more effective. Like, why would you want something to use as a survival tool when it is no match compared to a semi-automatic AR-15 that you can get today and put all kinds of different optics, scopes, and accessories on?
It's just too easy to pick up an AR platform just like this because they're cheap, they're abundant, you can find ammo for them, and they're highly customizable. I'd like to give the guys at All American Firearms a shout out for letting me bring this on set today. So thanks guys for supporting the channel.
Modern platforms also work well with modern night vision and thermal scopes as well. Really what you have to think about is practical uses for firearms. Yes, firearms are a tool. Yes, they can be used for practical purposes like self-defense, hunting, and survival. But when you think about it, there's more to it than just practical purposes for this argument. So in this video, I'm going to attempt to answer the age-old question of why people collect old guns. Bam! When you think about these old guns, yes, there was a period in time where people collected these old guns because they needed them for survival. They needed them to hunt on their property, to put food on the table. They needed it to go out in the wilderness for self-protection. They needed it for self-protection against their homestead. So yes, old firearms were a cheaper alternative to buying a more modern platform of the time. Now, if you look back in history, you can find that quite a few old black powder rifles that were used by the military were sold off to civilians, and a lot of these were converted to sporter rifles. That means the stock was cut short, and they were used mainly for deer hunting. So yes, the first reason here is people collect old guns for practical use purposes because they are a cheaper alternative to buying a modern platform. Now, within the recent years, a lot of that has gone down the drain because a lot of these old guns have definitely increased in value and collectability. Now, people still use some of these old guns to go out hunting, to probably take with them if they're going on a trip somewhere and they're going out to the wilderness. They probably want to carry a nice revolver in .45 long Colt. Now, in modern times, practical purposes, these old guns, they're highly valued and sought after. There's not as many people really buying these old guns for practical purposes anymore. So yeah, now reason number two why people collect old guns is, yeah, a lot of people think they're cool. Some of these guns were used in movies and video games, and so people find the cool factor in that. Oh yeah, this one was used in The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, so I'm going to pick me up a Desert Eagle using The Matrix. Oh yeah, they used a BAI in Saving Private Ryan, so I'm going to get me a BAI. In Star Wars, Han Solo used a Mauser C96 that was modified to look like a blaster. The cool factor of having something that's in a huge, large caliber is very enticing for somebody that's only used to shooting .556. So if you get a Mosin Nagant, some people think they're really cool because they shoot something that's a huge caliber. They have a huge muzzle blast. It kicks like a mule. They're powerful. So a lot of people might say, that's a really cool old gun. Kind of like driving a manual car, like an old manual car. When you work the bolt action on a Mosin Nagant, it's a little rough. It's kind of hard to do it. And some people might not be used to doing that. But once they get used to it, they might think, hey, this is really awesome. I'm used to shooting a semi-automatic, but this is a bolt action. I have to actually chamber the next round in manually, which means that this rifle is more hands-on and more user-managed than a semi-automatic would be. Besides the cool factor, another huge reason why people collect old guns is the history behind them. Think about these military rifles that were used during the Great War, World War II, Vietnam. Think about some of the weapons that were used to fight against communism, or maybe some of these weapons that were used to fight for a good and noble cause. Now, when you really take a deep dive into the historical aspect of these guns and why psychologically people are attracted to them because of the history, it's because the gun itself, the specific type of gun, the model, let's say a M1 Garand, has a story behind it, a story that is bigger than us. Maybe just a snippet of a larger story, but a vital part to the larger story, such as the M1 Garand was used by U.S. soldiers and Marines during World War II. World War II, the United States of America fought on two different theaters of war, the Pacific and the European theater. Now, if you think about it, soldiers armed with this weapon had the best tool capable of that era to complete their missions and objectives. So in essence, the M1 Garand, a vital tool used by the U.S. military during World War II, is a very significant part of American history and the past history of the American people. When you really think about it, people have been collecting old stuff for a very long time. It's really only within the last 100 years that a lot of the lower class and middle class have also collected some of these things as a collectible. Back in the day, some of these collectors were mainly just a bunch of wealthy guys that would have their own private collection. They collected books, they collected paintings, artwork. They would have extravagant areas in their house that were study rooms filled with all kinds of artifacts from different countries and different eras. Some of these people would go on to start museums, or there would just be a lot of these given to museums over time, and local museums and areas would get established and built up for other people to also witness that history and to take in that history. Why do wealthy individuals collect such artifacts? Not only is it to share the history or to preserve and look after, because their living conditions are probably better than the average person of that era, but it's also a lot of the wealthy individuals knew that these things are scarce. These things you cannot find throughout the rest of the world. And if they get destroyed, they'll be gone forever. And it's also because, like we talked about before, it's a part of a history, a story of the human race that goes beyond what we can really imagine when we look back into that time frame. People with money now know that because there is a short supply of artifacts and a high demand within the wealthier classes for these artifacts, they know that there's a store of value in these artifacts. So yes, people collect these artifacts. People collect old guns because of the appreciating value. But what I do find interesting is that some of these folks that are very wealthy must be some kind of investor, because these auction prices, guys, that these things go for are just ridiculous. I'm thinking that maybe they also view these as fine art. The aesthetics of these old guns, they don't make them like this anymore, guys. Now, you might say that some of these guns have gone up in value over time, but are they comparable to, like, the stock market? I did a cost analysis a few years ago in another video, and pretty much what I came to conclude that inflation-adjusted collectible guns have only gone up by maybe around 100% over the 60-year time frame. I said, what if I invested in Coca-Cola back in the 1960s? What if I invested in a bunch of M1 Garands? What would the values of those be? Well, I tracked it back, and going back to those values, so Coca-Cola back then was trading, very cheaply compared to today's money. So I said, okay, so if I invested in Coca-Cola, which it was, so right now we're looking at Coca-Cola being stock split a bunch of times with dividends. You gotta remember that they also pay dividends. And then you got to be looking at the investment piece of guns, where you're probably not going to get dividends, but you're going to be paying money to probably shoot the guns and enjoy it while you own it. The M1 Garand went up quite a few hundred percentages. Coca-Cola went up in value quite a few thousands. So what actually would have made you money more over the long run? Coca-Cola stock, by far. So yes, while collecting old guns is a way to preserve wealth and increase wealth, it's not really a good way to do it, especially for someone just doing it if they're trying to get rich. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme at all. Yeah, you would have better fortune if you went out and sought after a financial advisor and asked them which assets would be the best thing to invest in. So, in my opinion, you don't really want to collect these firearms if you want to get rich. You want to collect them if you want to preserve history and learn history, and just know that they probably will keep their value or slightly go up in value. Well, that's it for the video. I hope you found value in it. I'm gonna get out of here. It's gonna rain. Be sure to pulverize that like button and subscribe if you haven't. And as always, be sure to learn history and curate history. Make it a great day.